Hi everyone, welcome to GMATPoint. In this episode, we are trying to answer some of the frequently asked questions regarding GMAT. So we have Sayali ma'am here. Hi ma'am. So ma'am is a 100 percentiler in GMAT this time, this edition, right?
Yeah.
So what was your score?
It was 785.
Yeah, so it's a pretty high level score. Right?
Yeah, so out of 805. So 805 is the highest and you get like odd multiples of 5. So 785, 795, 805 are the highest three scores. And from 775 onwards, it is 100 percentile.
Okay. So for viewers who don't have much idea about what GMAT is, can you give a brief idea of what GMAT exam is about and the scope and outcome of the exam?
See, the GMAT exam is basically an entrance exam to get into an MBA college. Either there are some which accept the score within India, but basically internationally, many of the colleges look for the GMAT score. The reason why they look or they ask for the GMAT score is, apart from your academic profile, they want a standardized test that everyone takes so that they can actually place you in terms of your comprehension skills, your quantitative skills, your data analysis skills. How do you actually rank among the applicant pool? Okay. So this is a way of understanding what your skill level is. Okay. And because people come from very, very different backgrounds. Some people are from art, some people have a law background, some people have a humanities background. It's difficult to compare apples and oranges. And this is one score which helps you actually understand that is the student ready enough to actually do the MBA program, understand the subjects that are taught. Is he ready for MBA?
Is that a leveler for everyone from diverse backgrounds?
It's a leveler, but more than leveler, I think it is basically a test of are you ready enough? So it's basically they are not looking for the highest scorer. So they will actually accept somebody who has scored lower but who has a good profile because they are just looking that are you ready enough for the program. Okay. So it's not that you have to ace this exam, but you have to score high enough that they actually think that you are ready for this program as such.
From that point, can I ask you something like if you score 100 percentiler, can you not be sure that you get a college like that you aim?
No, because again, it's just one part of your overall process. So then they will look at your application, they will look at your academic profile, they look at your work experience. All of these things together decide whether or not you get the final admission.
Okay. So that's about the basic idea of what GMAT is. But there is a very common test also called as GRE. So what is the basic difference between these? There are certain colleges which accept both.
Yeah. So the GRE and GMAT, the one way you can actually think about it. So since this is majorly for Indian viewers, I'll actually compare with Cat, GMAT and GRE so that you get a good idea of like what is changing between the different exams. So if you have taken Cat, you know that the quantitative section is fairly difficult. Okay. The VRC section is also difficult. The DILR is super tricky and very, very difficult. So in general, it's a difficult exam, which engineers tend to ace.
You're talking about Cat, right?
Cat. I'm talking about Cat.
So let's talk about GMAT and GRE now. And then next, GMAT and Cat. So that'll be pretty much.
Yeah, okay. So basically now, if you come to GMAT, the GMAT is still... It has the similar sections, but not the same sections. It has quantitative section, like RC plus critical reasoning section, so the verbal ability section, verbal reasoning section, and then you have the data insight section. Now, essentially, the skills tested over here are roughly similar to CAT. So your quantitative skills are tested. How well can you solve arithmetic questions, algebra questions is tested. How well you can solve reading comprehension or critical reasoning, that is tested. And the last part is data insight. So they will again check, can you read a graph? Can you understand a table? All of that is basically tested. But the difficulty level is much lower than CAT. Okay. So you need not be an engineer to do well in GMAT. A non-engineer has just as good a chance of cracking GMAT as an engineer does. Okay. So that is basically the change. The sections roughly tested are the same, but the difficulty level is much I wouldn't say lower, it is different. Some parts are harder, some parts are much easier.
Okay, we are talking about the verbal reasoning section.
Verbal reasoning section, even in data insights, things can be tricky because they require an understanding of data distributions, of understanding of what is mean, median, mode, or what is standard deviation. All of these are different from what you're tested in CAT. Okay. Now let us come to GRE. Now GRE also has a quantitative section where you are again asked to solve arithmetic questions, algebra questions. You are also asked RCs, which are like generally simpler RCs. You have verbal reasoning, fill in the blanks. So the questions are, you can say the topics roughly match, but the questions are much easier. The format of questions is essentially becoming simpler. Okay, between GMAT and GRE. The skills tested are roughly same, but they require much lesser intensity. They require much lesser. Each question requires you less time, less effort to solve. Now, what becomes more important is that as the exam becomes easier, accuracy becomes more important. Here, if you make a mistake, you will be penalized for it. But
GMAT.
Yeah, in GMAT. But it won't be that heavy. If you make a mistake in GRE, it would be very, very difficult, particularly if you're coming from the Indian subcontinent, where everybody is expected to get either a perfect score or a near perfect score. So if you make any mistake in GRE, it is going to be much more harshly penalized than a GMAT mistake. So that's the main difference. The topics tested are roughly the same. The difficulty level is different, but because the difficulty level is different, the need for accuracy is higher for GRE than for GMAT.
So GMAT is specifically for MBA, right?
Yes. So
GRE is used for other
undergraduate programs as well. So people mostly who take GRE are doing it for undergraduate programs. GMAT is specifically for postgraduate MBA exams, MBA entrance as such. Now the difference is that one of the reasons why many earlier colleges used to ask for the GMAT score. Most of the MBA programs would take only a GMAT score. So now to actually diversify their applicant pool, they are also accepting GRE scores. They're converting GRE scores into an equivalent GMAT score and then basically taking a decision on based on that. So it's essentially a move to have a more diverse and a bigger applicant pool. So many programs now accept GRE, but it is not 100% of the programs because the legacy is still GMAT. The move to GRE is a newer one. So if you are looking to have a best chance of actually getting into an MBA program abroad, I would say GMAT is still your best bet.
So GMAT would be the thing if someone want to focus on MBA.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have talked about the differences between what GRE and CAT is, but let's be more specific. Who should take CAT? Who should take GMAT?
See, I would say that if you are preparing for like an MBA program, if you want to take an MBA entrance exam, I would say that you should give both. The reason for that is that in 1 year, you can manage to apply for both. You can prepare for both and give both. And then you maximize your chances of getting a good college either at home or abroad. Okay. So it's not something that is either or. You don't have to choose. You can do both. Okay. Again, who would be better at CAT? Who would be better at GMAT? I feel that engineers have an upper hand at CAT. I wouldn't say that non-engineers are at a disadvantage at CAT because again, that is overall balanced when in the actual admission process, they actually get academic diversity, marks, etc. So that gets balanced out. But in terms of doing well in the exam itself, engineers who are better at solving difficult quant questions or maths questions have an advantage. In GMAT, a non-engineer can do just as well, if not better, than an engineer.
So we have talked about both of them should be prepared simultaneously. But let's have a timeline on that. Which should be taken first? We are starting from this time or May, June. So which should I go for? Because GMAT, we have an option to select our time. CAT is fixed November, last Sunday of the November month. So how should we go about that?
I'll consider two cases. The first case is where you have about 3 to 4 hours of time to prepare every single day.
Working professional.
If you have that kind of time, and I'll consider two cases. One where you have 3 to 4 hours or where you have 2 hours or less. Okay. If you have 3 to 4 hours of time, what I would say is that schedule your GMAT entrance, GMAT exam by September as such.
Before CAT.
Before CAT. So what you can then do is you can schedule your preparation in such a way that you do the overlap subjects of GMAT and CAT, then GMAT specific subject, and post September you can do the CAT specific subjects. Okay. In a way, you do the easier part first and then schedule the harder part later. And there is sufficient overlap between the two exams. Like I would say,
we have clearly made a video on that. We'll link it down in the button. And the overlap between, we have made a diagram video. So clearly you can actually see that, but you can actually talk about that in brief.
See, basically, if you consider the quantitative part, both are very heavy on arithmetic and algebra. GMAT is easier, CAT is slightly harder. So if you start off with arithmetic and algebra, you can actually, if you do the earlier few questions, the easier sets as such, you can solve the GMAT exam. Similarly, in terms of the verbal reasoning part, there is a heavy focus on reading comprehension in both exams.
Yeah.
So if you start with reading comprehension preparation, it would help with both exams as such. I would say that even do the critical reasoning work beforehand, before CAT itself, because it will help you in the reading comprehension work.
Yeah.
So it will help you quite a bit in, it is a part or syllabus of GMAT, but it would help you immensely with CAT also.
Yeah, CAT also nowadays asks question like which would strengthen, which would weaken. Basic critical reasoning only.
Yes. And it also helps you understand all the inference-based questions. Which of these can be inferred, which of these cannot be inferred. So all of that is critical reasoning, which has been introduced into reading comprehension.
Yeah.
So again, I would say that GMAT verbal reasoning syllabus would 100% help you with the CAT preparation. Now then it comes to data insights. Now data insights is completely different. DILR is completely different. There is very little overlap. It's basically reading of charts. That is the overlap. Yeah. If you prepare for data insights, you would be doing like say 1/8 of the work that you have to do for DILR.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be the level of overlap. So these are the only two things that are separate. But otherwise, the other two sections overlap quite a bit.
Yeah, but when it comes to the GMAT data insight, we need to be able to understand the pattern of question. Like we have two-part analysis, multi-source reasoning. And
you have multi-source reasoning, you have two-part analysis, table analysis. It is very, very different, and it requires specific preparations for that. You can't prepare for CAT and go and do that.
So for data insights, we have uploaded a lot of videos in the channel itself, so you can actually check them out. This is a new pattern, right?
It's completely new. Yeah, so people are not really prepared for it. That's the reason many students, I feel, are underperforming in that section.
But it's fairly easy, right?
It is easy with practice. It is something which you have not really done. Okay. It's not something that you would do in your 10th, 12th or undergrad. It's something which you have to learn to do. So because it's new, people are not really doing well in that.
So that's about the basic, but let's focus on the part, focus edition.
Okay.
So GMAT introduced on November 7th, they introduced the focus edition.
Yeah.
So they changed it. So currently we are having focus edition. So is the old one currently existing?
No, they have stopped access to it. So those scores will no longer be accepted. If
it will be accepted, like if it was before this year, it will be valid for 5 years, right? From that point.
Yeah, so it will be valid, but essentially they are not accepting registrations for the OG exam anymore. So basically you can't register for the OG exam anymore. If you have an older OG score, it is still valid for the admission process, but requests for the OG exam are not being accepted anymore. So you have if you have not taken the exam, the only option you have is basically the FE. Yeah.
So I've just noted down the basic differences which have come, and you can actually tell what is your insight on that. So earlier section, there were 4 sections in the earlier GMAT, which was like quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning, integrated reasoning, and analytical writing. In the new one, they have removed the integrated reasoning and analytical writing, and they have introduced data insights.
Yeah.
And have they introduced a lot of change in the existing ones, which are like quantitative reasoning and verbal reasoning?
Yeah, they've removed geometry, so your syllabus is become much more streamlined. You don't have to do as much preparation as you would have to do earlier, because geometry is like difficult to do. You have a lot of formulas to remember.
Yeah.
So your job is easier now in the quant section. In terms of verbal reasoning also, they've removed sentence correction. So your job is much easier now, because sentence correction would be the one area in which a lot of students would struggle. You would have like these long sentences. You had to find error in that sentence. It would be, it was a nightmare for me. After like doing all of this, it would be something that I would never be sure of. So removing that is a big like headache gone for a lot of students.
So that is it. So is there any addition in verbal reasoning because something is removed?
No, just remove it. They have removed geometry. They have kept only RC and CR in verbal reasoning. They have made it much more tightly defined, both in verbal reasoning as well as in quant. The only addition is basically the data insight section. It is an entirely new section which has been added. Now, this is basically kind of a second version or a higher level version of integrated reasoning. Many of the questions that used to come in integrated reasoning now come in this section as such, data insight section. So it's not entirely new. There was some version of this earlier in form of integrated reasoning. The issue is that earlier integrated reasoning was not part of your GMAT score. So even if you did poorly in integrated reasoning, your GMAT score would not get affected.
So earlier, the weightage was most towards quantitative reasoning and verbal reasoning, which was weighted equally to the total score.
50-50.
And now it's equally divided between the three sections, which is the quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning, and the data insights part, right? So why did they use the other two parts in the earlier section, the integrated and analytical writing?
So they would actually send those scores separately to the MBA institute. So the MBA institute could then decide, do I actually use it or do I not use it?
So it's subjective in nature.
It's subjective in nature. Basically, it would not be part of the standardized score.
Okay.
So if a institute had a filter saying that, okay, I will take or accept like scores only above 650. So poor integrated reasoning would not make you, like it would not filter you out. But again, even after the filter, they would actually look at the score and decide whether or not I want, whether this is important or not.
Okay. So earlier it was like 3 hour 7 minute test.
Yeah.
And now it's like 2 hour 15 minutes, which has like reduced
Quite a bit, yeah.
So how do you feel when you take the test? You have taken both tests, right? The 3 hour one and 2 hour 15 minutes one.
Yeah, I think this is a better form of it because I felt that the original test would be slightly tiring because it was a longer test and you had to actually write down like essays, etc. So it would be slightly exhausting by the end of it.
Or say the written test there.
Not a writing, you have to type it, but still you have to like formulate arguments, you have to think. And in general, when you're solving more questions over time, the fatigue builds up. You could choose the order in which you would do the
which one to go for,
which section you wanted to do first. But in the end, eventually the last section, there would be some amount of fatigue that would build up. So here you would not have that issue. A 2 hour 15 minutes is not that tiring.
So it's like 45 for each. So here do we have the choice of selection?
Yeah, you have the choice of selection of ordering of the this. You have 3 choices. You have to make that choice at the start of the exam.
Okay, so you have to start and choose the order and then go for it. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that will be much better for someone who is having less attention span and...
Less attention, I think it is better for everybody. I don't think it would be anybody who would be actually at a disadvantage over here because it's better for everybody that it's a shorter test. It's the most streamlined test. If you are a working professional and you're having a job which is like 9 to 6 or 9 to 7, by the time you come back home, it's 8 already. It would be difficult for you to like study for a 3-hour exam as such.
Yeah.
So this is something that would actually make it much more accessible to a lot of people. Okay. Lesser syllabus, shorter exam, lesser number of things tested. So it makes it more possible for a lot more students to apply.
So given that you scored like 770 in the GE, like the original edition, and 785 in the focus edition, it may seem like it's easier to score in this because you have scored 785 in the focus edition. So is it easier test?
It's not easier. So I'll tell you why exactly I scored 770 and why I scored 785. Okay. So when I scored 770, I went without any preparation. So I did not really prepare for sentence correction. My preparation for RC was always there because I had given CAT. I was teaching for CAT. I knew reading comprehension well. With CR also because I was teaching CR as part of CAT. I had a very good idea of CR, but I didn't have idea of CR specific to GMAT as such, which is slightly different. So I was getting penalized in the CR part and I was doing terribly in the sentence correction part.
So critical reasoning and the verbal reasoning part?
Yeah, in verbal reasoning, critical reasoning I was doing not great, but not terrible. Okay. But sentence correction was terrible. So basically because of those 2 parts, my overall score was getting impacted. In terms of quant, I was getting 51 out of 51. I couldn't.
Full marks.
Yeah. So I couldn't do anything better there. So because it is 50% weightage, my full marks over here were not compensating for the weaknesses over here. Okay. So I couldn't do any better over here. So even if I took the test again, the same thing would happen where I would have the same score in quant, but I couldn't do anything better over here because I was not really prepared for the sentence correction part. So what has essentially changed between that and this is that I would say that with the removal of sentence correction, now the preparation that is required for GMAT specifically has gone down because I was not preparing specifically for GMAT. So with just CAT preparation, you can do fairly well in GMAT FE, but that would not be the case earlier. Okay.
So are you saying that you did not prepare at all for GMAT FE?
I didn't prepare at all in terms of I saw a few questions. So I knew that, sentence correction checked parallelism. So I checked, what is parallelism? I knew that.
But you also teach parallelism.
Yeah. So I had some idea, but I had not really solved the kind of questions that come in GMAT.
Okay.
So I was completely not prepared, but I knew the basics. So you know the basics, you think over there. But if you're thinking over there, obviously accuracy will not be great. Okay. And this requires accuracy. Okay, so that was the only difference I feel. In this particular exam, when I got 780.
What about data insights?
Data insights, the integrated reasoning, I think I got 8 on 8 because again, it is a way of reading charts. So if you're prepared for CAT, you know how to read charts, you know how to deal with tables. It was not difficult. Without specific preparation also, you can do well in that part. The only part where you would not do well is the sentence correction because you had no previous idea about it. Now they have basically over here, that part is gone, but because you have data insights, you might still struggle in parts of data insights.
Okay.
So when I actually did the 785 in the focus edition, I was prepared. I was much more prepared because I was making the GMAT course. I was researching the exam. I was giving, seeing the OG guide. I was seeing the questions that were coming. So I was definitely, there was a difference in preparation also.
Okay.
So I knew much more about the exam by the time I gave the FE. So that was the first difference. The second difference was many of the things, the overlap between CAT and GMAT FE has increased. So if you are good at CAT, you will do much better now than you would do earlier.
Okay. So the reason I asked this is because people may look at your higher score and think that this is easier to score. And you told it's easier to score. But the data is showing that FE have lesser score compared to the older one.
So basically what is happening over here is that the quant questions I feel have gotten slightly harder maybe because what has happened is as they have narrowed the syllabus, you are asking for more questions from the same topic.
Yeah, algebra.
Algebra, arithmetic. As you solve more questions, the harder questions come.
Okay.
So now questions...
It's a dynamic exam, right?
It's an adaptive exam. So if you're asking more questions from the same topic, what will happen eventually as you solve more questions correctly, harder questions will come.
Okay.
If you had a more broader base, you had geometry, you also... So even if it actually increased in difficulty, it would not become too difficult. Okay. Now the difficulty has slightly crept up, but not by that much.
You still scored full, right?
Yeah, again scored full because it is again considerably easier than CAT.
Okay.
Considerably, like a huge difference. But again,
in 45 minutes, you will be able to solve full questions.
All questions.
But usually it's like not very easy to solve all questions in CAT, right?
It's impossible. I'm actually a very slow solver. Okay. So if somebody has seen my dash CAT attempts, my number of questions that I usually solve are 11 or 12 out of 22. So
still you were able to score better in FE edition of GMAT.
Yeah, because here you get 2 minutes per question. And that question can be solved in 2 minutes.
Okay.
So it's not like a 4-minute question which you have to solve in 2 minutes. So that is not there. So if you are mindful of the time, you will be able to actually solve all questions correctly. But here again, it's not easy per se. It's doable. All questions can be solved correctly, but you should have a good conceptual knowledge. There are no tricks. There are no hacks. You have to be very, essentially when accuracy is needed, you should be very conceptually sound. If you're not conceptually sound, you are just hoping that I do some percentage of questions, then you will get punished. Because if you make a mistake in a question early on, you will be really penalized in GMAT. It would not be the case in CAT where you can attempt any questions in any order.
Okay. So in GMAT, basic focus should be on building the foundation very well so that it's strong and you will be able to answer the basic question which comes in and you know the concept very well.
Yes.
But in CAT, we may have questions which we need to apply certain tricks or which requires a lot of different kind of practice.
Sure. So basically in say CAT, you can decide that, okay, I am not able to understand PNC. I'm not getting a grasp of it. I'll leave it. You can't do that over here.
Okay.
So here, if you actually get a counting methods is one of the others. If you get a question from that and it is like one of the first 3-4 questions and you don't solve it, you will get penalized. Okay. So essentially this, you can think of it that over here, it is not about quick solving. You have time. Time is not an issue. It is conceptual base and full syllabus coverage, which is super important.
So in CAT, we can select questions, but GMAT we cannot.
Yeah.
So if a question is coming in front of you, if you don't know the question, what can we do?
If you don't know the question, basically try to solve it using the options to an extent. So basically try to see that, for example, I'll consider 2 parts separately, where you have a question which is a problem solving question, where you have to find the right answer.
Okay.
I don't know how to solve it, but if I can form an equation, I don't know how to solve the equation, I'll try solving it using the
reverse engineering.
Using the options, I can see that, okay, the value should be at least this much and at max that much. Okay.
And maybe clues like it should be a prime or something.
It should be something like that. So you can use the options in case of problem solving. In case of data sufficiency, if you're not able to understand it conceptually, whether it is sufficient, it is not sufficient, you should spend time trying to find contradictory cases.
Okay.
So can you contradict the conclusion? Are there cases where you can say that both in this particular case, even with both of these statements, I can't find the answer. So that is basically when you don't know the answer, you can't solve the question, then you use the options or contradictory cases to try to arrive at an answer.
Okay.
You have to answer, you can't skip a question because that is something that would actually hurt you much more.
Okay, so we can't skip a question, so we have to mark something.
You have to mark something.
So earlier we were not able to correct it, but now they have introduced a new bookmark and review option until you can change up to 3 responses.
Yeah.
So will that be really helpful?
It is really helpful. So basically, if you don't know a particular, understand a particular part of something, I think in this given attempt only, when I had scored 785, I did not know a term. Okay. I did not know a particular thing that they were asking.
In which section?
I think it was...
listening.
No, I think it was data insights. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly right now. But they've had asked for not quant, not VARC. It was, I think, in data insights where they were asking for a statistical term or something of that sort.
Okay.
Where I was not sure what the statistical term
So you marked something and went...
I marked something. Then in the later part of the exam, a similar question came. And from the options there, I could figure out what they were asking in the earlier question.
Okay.
Okay, so then I realized that, okay, they want this. Then I could go back in the final review and I could go back and rechange. I didn't have to change my answer. My original answer was correct. Okay. But still I could confirm that that is what they were asking as such. So I was not sure at that point of time whether this is what they are asking. Okay. But a later question on the similar topic, then from the options I could figure out, this is what they are asking. Okay. And then I could go back and say, this is the correct answer.
So you're saying that really helped, the new feature?
Yeah, it does help. And you can basically, what I would say is that in quant, you have to be a bit fast, where even though you have 2 minutes per question, try to solve it within 1.5 minutes, because there might be some questions which are slightly longer than 2 minutes. So you need that buffer time for that. Okay. And also you should have 5 minutes left at the end of the section to go and quickly check the answers once. Okay. And also one thing is that you should be very mindful of time, so that the worst thing that can happen is that you don't answer a few questions. So suppose that you are there is less than 5 minutes left and you have a lot of questions remaining, and the section gets submitted without you answering the last 2-3 questions. Okay. So then you will actually get impacted quite a bit, because the way they score is that they consider that the last 2 questions that you didn't solve, for example, they mark that as wrong, and the next question that would come after that is an easier question, and they mark that question also as wrong. So then you come and then you are marked as you got an easy question wrong.
Okay.
So that will hurt you quite a bit.
Okay, I understand.
So you have to be very careful that you actually leave yourself time for doing the review process. You don't leave any question till then. And this also means that you won't fixate on a particular question. You can say that I will answer the question, I'll move on, and if it is wrong, I'll come back and fix it later. Okay. So this also means that you don't waste that much time, but leave yourself 3-4 minutes at the very end to change look at the questions, review the questions, and make changes if needed. One thing I would actually say is that review every question. And what I actually did before submitting my quant section, for example, is that I double checked the question answer that I marked was the same thing that they had asked, because you can solve a whole question and then you can find the value of X and Y. But they might, and you would then mark what is X, for example, but they might have asked for Y. So at the very end, just check whether what they have asked is exactly what you have answered.
There were instances where even when I was practicing, the question was X square, I got X, I'm like, the answer is in the option, let me go for it.
Yeah.
So question may be X square or 3X something.
Yeah, so that's what you have to check at the very end. After all things have been marked, you got this answer, you still have the solved sheets in front of you.
And the problem is the option has the same X.
Yeah, they will obviously...
Yes, I got it, and just move on.
Yeah, they'll obviously try to trap you. That is basically when you do, in the final review, you check, what were they asking exactly? Because in your haste and your happiness that I have actually solved this question, you mark off what you immediately get. So you should not do that. That is when you should double check. That is this what they have asked or not.
So what ma'am saying is that try to attempt all the questions. You have to reach the end.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if we don't reach the next question, it's like adaptive. If you mark it wrong,
Yeah.
they'll give you an easier question.
Yeah.
That will also be marked as wrong.
Yes.
Which will then should be giving you an easier question. Again, that is marked.
If you have 3 questions which are not marked correctly, it will be very bad because it is 2 questions marked incorrectly. Third will be like a sitter, and that is marked incorrectly.
Yeah.
So then it will be like, then your score will drop down quite a bit.
Put the pattern, everything is wrong, so the score will...
Yeah, it will plummet because of it.
Okay. So the scoring pattern is a bit weird when it comes to GMAT because it's not linear, right? Like for CAT, I can say I'll do 10 questions, 10 into 3, 30. If I get negative, minus 3, 27. But here, it's like 805, 7, like everything in this odd multiple. So how is it exactly counted? Is there a pattern for that?
So it's a pattern. Basically, they have not given full details of exactly how they're going to score, but they have basically mentioned that it is based on the question difficulty and your accuracy. So because it's an adaptive test, if you answer questions correctly, you will get harder questions. If you answer correct questions incorrectly, you will get easier questions.
Okay.
So if you suppose you are answering questions and you go on till a later stage of the test and you give an answer incorrectly, and you will get some negative points for that. And again, the next question would be a slightly easier. Okay. So you are actually losing out on 2 parts. Firstly, the negative marks from this question, and also because you are getting easier questions post that question.
Okay.
So because of that, slightly also it was going to affect the overall score you're going to get because the difficulty of the questions that you have been, the average difficulty has gone down. So it's basically average difficulty or the difficulty of the question into whether you have gotten it correct or not. So you're getting penalized on both parts. Firstly, the accuracy over here and the whether the future questions as such. Okay. All right? These are the 2 things that are going to affect your score. What is going to affect your score much more is if you get a question wrong at the start. Because then the average difficulty of the entire test becomes lower.
So will the first question be on a lighter level or like medium or high?
It will be very easy. But the issue is that you have to be very, very, very focused in the first few, You can't, there are some students who are not fully on in the first few questions. After first few questions, they get warmed up. That won't work because from the first question itself, you have to be very, very exact. Because what will happen is that this is something that a lot of students have experienced that, suppose I solved the entire section. I got one question incorrect at the very end. Okay. I got very good score in Quant. I got one question incorrect at the very start. I had a much lower score than somebody who got one question incorrect at the very end. And that person felt that I just got one question incorrect. I should not get this much or this lower a score just because I got one question incorrect.
I'll put it in another way. One person got one question wrong in the first.
Yeah.
Another one got the one question wrong in the end.
Yeah.
So who will get better score?
The one who got it at the end would get a much higher score. And it would be like a huge difference, not a small difference. It would be a huge substantial difference between the scores of those 2 people for the same number of correct and incorrect questions.
Yeah. So that's why it's an adaptive test. They are testing you. So I think the last question, if we make it wrong, that will also be a difficult question, right? If you have a streak of correct.
Yes.
So it will be going up the difficulty.
It's not linearly up because basically they alternate between different topics. So if they have tested you for time, speed, distance, if they bring in a topic from profit and loss, it will not be that difficult.
It will also be like on a lighter level, then go up.
It won't exactly go to 0, but it would be much, whenever a new question comes up, it would not be that difficult as such. So again, a lot of students think that, if I am given a easier question, that means the last question was wrong. And then they will go to the review section and change the option there. That's not what happens. Sometimes you get easier questions just because the topic has changed. Or sometimes you get easier questions because it's a test question. So there are some questions which are not really marked for difficulty. They are new questions and they are testing for difficulty. Okay. So it's not really that you have gotten the earlier question wrong. That's why you have been given a easier question. That often actually trips up a lot of people. They think that, maybe I made a mistake in the last question. That's not the case.
Okay. So we have talked about the 3 sections, out of which I think quantitative reasoning, you can aim for the full.
You basically can, what I would say is that do the complete syllabus, don't leave any part, and make sure that you have practiced thoroughly. Every section, every part of the syllabus, you have solved 100 questions of it, so that you have a very good understanding of it. with that kind of preparation, you can aim near complete or like basically just 1 wrong or 2 wrong. Yeah. Below 2 wrong, I think would be a bit of a dampener on your overall score. But 1 to 2 questions wrong would be still a decent score as such. So that is basically, if you are somebody who is Indian, that is something that you should aim for, because we would tend to outperform over here and in the data insight section, and maybe not perform as well in the verbal reasoning section. Okay.
So let's look at verbal reasoning part. So how to approach it, how to prepare for it, how to start doing it.
So there is basically, the syllabus is very clearly defined. It is only RC and critical reasoning. Now RCs, you might have practice for RCs from your CAT preparation. So that definitely does translate quite a bit into the skill over here. You will need to understand the RC, understand the passage, know how to approach certain kind of questions. The only thing that I will actually mention over here is that the questions are slightly different. Like basically in the entire exam,
RCs are smaller, right? The passages for GMAT?
The passages are 400 words or lesser, 300 to 400 words. So it's lesser than the 500 words that come in CAT. So it's smaller, it's easier to read. They are more business oriented. They are more practical, pragmatic, rather than like you won't get philosophical RCs or something like that.
That's what CAT will test on.
You won't get completely, so it would be mostly current affairs related, something that a business person is expected to know about. So it's much more easier to read. It's a simpler RC. The cause-effect relationships are much more evident. It's not a complicated RC as such. Okay. To understand and answer questions is also not difficult. Basically, I made a mistake in my RC section. I think in my entire test, I got 1 question wrong in DI and I got 2 questions wrong in RC. And RC is basically the 2 questions that I got wrong in RC were the same question. What is the main point of this passage? Okay. Now, when you say what is the main point of the passage in terms of CAT, okay, you're looking at the overall purpose behind the passage. Yeah. So that is what I marked. What is the overall purpose behind the passage? What is the main message that the author is trying to convey? But in terms of GMAT, it is much more exact. It is more narrowly defined. So basically what I would suggest is that the skills tested are similar, but the questions and the required answer for the questions might be slightly different for GMAT than for CAT. Okay. So when you are asked for CAT, for example, you are asked what can be inferred. So you have to be very exact. Can this be inferred? Can this exactly be inferred? Or how much of it can be inferred? So that same doesn't translate to GMAT, where GMAT, the type of questions and the type of answers expected do not exactly map onto CAT questions exactly. So if you have done CAT preparation, you have to just be very careful about these specific questions which are slightly different in their orientation than CAT.
Okay. So that's there. So there's a difference in approach. Yeah. So when it comes to the main point thing that you talked about, the author would only aim at one single point, right? I want this message to be passed on to the public who is reading it.
Yeah. But see, basically what happens is that in CAT, you have a broader RC. You have a broader message. Essentially, if you are, for example, if the RC is about the flaws in a particular policy, somebody has written about the new education policy, they have highlighted all the flaws in the education policy. Now, if the options are to highlight the issues with the education policy, or one of the options is to argue that the new education policy is flawed and should be reworked. Okay. When you're considering from a CAT perspective, the message is always broader. You have to not look at the details, but look at the overall message that the person is giving. In terms of RCs in GMAT, you have to be actually narrow in your scope. You have to look exactly what is he saying and stick to just what he's saying. You can't then say that, okay, he's asking for to repeal the NEP. He's not saying that. You have to essentially say that he has highlighted three issues with the NEP. Just be very, very exact, be very, very constrained in scope. Because the passages are also very different. Here they're looking for somebody who can understand and read between the lines. In terms of CAT, in terms of GMAT, you need exactness. So if he has said exactly this, you have to put exactly that.
Okay, so CAT also has question like which of the following is most likely.
Yeah. Then you're like you're in speculative territory with CAT, right? What is the author likely to agree with? Which will he not agree with? Okay, so all of that is slightly speculative, which is not the tone taken by GMAT at all.
Students also argue with in terms of like, how can you surely say this guy will agree with
that? That's the point, right? Because they are trying to remove the subjectivity to an extent. So GMAT is not a subjective exam. So here you can argue that, no, I felt that the author is giving this message. There you can't do that. You have to be very, very exact. See, he has said 1, 2, 3 things. So that's why the answer is he has said 3 things are wrong with this. So here, in fact, you have to be as the option which introduces subjectivity would not be the correct answer.
Okay, so considering the points that we talked now, what would be considered a good GMAT score to get into a foreign university? We are not talking about, like, say, top ones in general, which, like,
a good university.
Yeah, good university.
Good university, I would say that you should aim for something which is above 650. Then you have access or a chance at getting a final admission for the top 20 or so universities that are there, MBA programs in the US. You would also need, in addition to this score, you would also need a good academic profile. So you should also be looking at that. So how can you actually improve your profile? How can you build your profile? But in addition to that, a good GMAT score would definitely open up a lot of doors for you.
Okay, so how to improve the profile and things we'll discuss in a separate video. So let's consider the fact that we have a certain score. If I get, say, in CAT, we usually say, right, if I get a 99.7 plus, I have a fairly high chance. Can we say that with GMAT in general?
See, basically, you can say that it will help quite a bit. If there are some deficiencies with your profile, it will help. But it can't paper over all deficiencies. So if you have a very poor GMAT, if you have a very poor undergrad score, for example, if you have a 7-point GPA, it can kind of substitute, because it would indicate that you are somebody who is academically sound. Your skills are there, but you might not have done that well in this particular program, or the program itself might be difficult. Okay, because there are certain programs where the GPAs are on the lower side. But on the other hand, if you have a GPA which is in a 5 point something, it would not be able to compensate for that. So it can't compensate for everything, but to an extent, it will definitely help you, given that there might be some profile weaknesses.
Okay. So I've generally heard that GMAT is very subjective in nature. Even if you get a certain score, you cannot be sure. Or if you have a lower score, it will not. Like, I've heard people who have like very unique profile, like rank holder in something and had a thesis paper which was submitted in something, they have a fairly high chance, right?
Yeah. They look at your entire profile. So you have to remember that the GMAT is one part of your application. It will help your application. In fact, there were many programs which during COVID were allowing applications without the GMAT score. They were just looking at just based on profile, they were giving final admissions. So you can see how much weightage they actually give the rest of the profile also. The idea is that your academic profile, to an extent, is kind of fixed right now. Your 10th, 12th undergrad scores are fixed. You can't do much about that. You can improve your work experience. You can get better roles in your organization. You can work on your extracurricular activities or your co-curricular activities. You can work on any positions of responsibility, any volunteering work that you're doing. You can work on that part. You can work on how many languages you speak. All those kind of things that you can actually work on to boost your profile. But that is basically where you can improve. But much of your profile is fixed. So what can you actually change is your GMAT score.
Exactly. So someone who is like very unique profile, has a very unique profile, say someone is like a topper in a sport, like they are like rank holders in something, that's a wrong term to say, who is like scoring the like first in like or national level competitor, they have a pretty high chance to get, right?
Yes, that is basically what they are looking for. Somebody, see, if a MBA program, the admissions director is looking through your profile, what they want to see is basically somebody who is sincere and dedicated. And if you have pursued a passion for an extended period of time, so that basically shows that you're somebody who is very dedicated and who will pursue things with a full passion for something. And that's what they want. Somebody who is going to turn up for the classes, who is going to contribute to the classes, who's going to bring a diverse point of view, and who's going to bring in some intensity to the program as such. So they want those kind of guys, those who will put themselves out, try to excel at something. So that's basically that's what they want to see. So you might think that, okay, this is not something that I have a lot of medals in, or I have a lot of I have not won a lot in this particular field. But if you have been consistent, if you have been passionate, and even if you have worked hard at it for a extended period of time, even then that is a very valuable part of your profile as such.
So these are the major points which are like applying for the colleges and GMAT score. And if our audience really wants it, we'll
have another podcast about profile and what you can actually do to present your profile better. Your profile is part of it is the facts, but also there is also about how you present it, how you actually add to it, what you can do to augment it. So all of those are also part of your application.
So there are also other factors like essays, interviews, and recommendation letters which you need.
Definitely.
So we'll talk about that and comment down below if you really want about the profile video. So we have talked in general about the general frequently asked question which we have. So we have also talked about how to prepare. So if we want a streamlined preparation, what can we do for that?
See, what I would say is that I would recommend 2 sources for preparation. One is the OG guide. The OG guide, you can see the syllabus and it is something that every student should go through. Okay. And the second source I would say is GMATPoint. We have excellent questions, and I always believe in practice being one of the most important pillars of your preparation. If you solve questions, you understand what is wrong, what is right. You know how to solve yourself. Yeah. So that's why we have a lot of practice questions. We have a study room. Basically, you have access to questions categorized by topic. So you know the syllabus from the OG, and from the syllabus, you go and try to solve questions from each of these particular questions. All of the questions have text solution, also a video solution. So I'll be explaining how to solve the particular question, and we have like thousands of questions. So what these 2 will essentially accomplish is that firstly, you will have an understanding of what the exam is, what is being asked, and here you will understand how to solve the question. Okay. So this is what I would recommend to students. Do take a look at GMATPoint.com. So you'll get a good idea of how you should go about preparing, and you'd also understand that, okay, am I able to solve this, or do I need more help to prepare for this?
So generally one question which we get a lot in both Crapo and GMATPoint is that, is this enough? Like, are these set of questions enough? So what we as mentors or people who work here generally say to the student is that if sir is having 100 percentile, which means the resources are enough. It's about how you use it.
Yes.
So they're like, are these resources enough to get a good score?
See, basically what I want or what I expect of students when I give these questions is that given a question, you try to solve it yourself. So maybe you will answer it correctly. Maybe you will answer it. You will not be able to answer it. So if you don't know how to answer it, you will see the solution or you will see the video and you will learn how to solve it.
Yeah.
The entirety of the study room is basically the entirety of the syllabus. So if you have learned how to solve each of these questions independently, overall, you would have learned to solve all the questions that are there. Okay. Again, this is basically practice-based learning. Okay. So the more you practice, the better you know. Okay. You won't get a sudden this isn't like your usual exams. If you have given 10th or 12th, you have a textbook, you mug up the textbook and then you go and write down the 5 points of something. But it's not like that. Here, the question is about whether you're able to solve the whether you're able to solve the problem.
The fundamentals required for solving the problem, we have to build it strong.
Sorry?
The fundamentals required to solve the problem should be built strong.
They should be built strong, and you should know how and when to apply them. So if you know most of us already know the formula for time, speed and distance. Okay, you know that distance is speed into time. But knowing when to apply, how to apply, right? How to write the equation. That is basically the tricky part. That is basically will decide how much you score. So
it's about learning the fundamentals and how to apply in different scenarios.
Learning through application. Okay. Only then will it actually stick to your mind.
Okay. So this is the basic thing. And one of the thing is where can we take mocks for GMAT? So in general, GMAT, they provide a mock.
They provide a couple of mocks. They provide practice exams as such. But apart from the OG exam, we will be trying to upload mocks on GMATPoint.com. So they are coming shortly. They are not live right now, but they will be coming shortly in the month of July.
So the work in progress.
They are work in progress, yeah.
So that's about it. We have answered a lot of different questions which are very common. So thank you, ma'am, for your valuable time.
It was lovely to have this conversation. Okay. Thank you.
So if you want more videos, do comment down below and we'll make new videos. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.